What's up guys, Joey here from 9 to 5 Escape. Today we're doing a little bit of maintenance work on the 2005 4Runner. My end links on my sway bar, the boots are all torn and lost all the grease, so I'm going to be replacing those. And then on acceleration, deceleration, kind of start and stop conditions, I'm getting a little bit of clunking when I'm accelerating. So the bushings for the sway bar are getting replaced as well on the front and back. I did go ahead and buy Moog branded end links for the front and rear, and then I bought OEM bushings for the front and rear sway bars. So let's go ahead and replace all those.
We're going to start with the front of the car first. First, you want to jack up the car, take off the wheels on both sides. When you're jacking up the car, make sure you're jacking it up from the frame and not the suspension. Once it's jacked up and the wheels are off, you can take off the front splash guard and you'll have access to the sway bar. First, we're going to remove the sway bar end link where it attaches to the suspension. So you can take this nut off here. The second piece of the end link attaches to the sway bar itself, and it's a bolt that's behind the sway bar. You're going to move this one second. You can see here that the old end link is blown. The boots are torn, there's no grease left, and the ball joints are very loose and floppy, so definitely need to replace it. Once the sway bar's out, you can put the new one in. The longer stud goes on top and the shorter stud goes on the bottom. Make sure you have the right side. There is left versus right, or driver versus passenger. You can see that the new end link ball is nice and solid. The boot holds well. Now you can tighten the nut down on the end link. Some end links come with a nut that you have to hold down as you tighten. So get yourself a pair of vice grips or a box end open end wrench to hold it as you tighten it. It is going to be torqued to 52 foot-pounds, so get that as accurate as you can. Same thing with the bottom nut. Hold the nut down with the vice grips or your wrench and tighten the nut down to 52 foot-pounds. Depending on how big your torque wrench is, your shock might get in the way of this lower nut here. I had to use an articulating socket to get to it. The process is identical to the other side, so just repeat this and you'll be good to go with the end links. Moving on to the sway bar bushings, there are two 14mm bolts here, one in the front, one in the back. The front one is slotted, so you can just loosen it and slide it out, but the rear one you have to remove. Once those are out, you can slide the new one back in. Once your bolts are out, you can slide the bracket off, take off the old bushing, and put the new bushing on. When you put the new one on, make sure this little tab on the bottom goes towards the inside of the car. You're going to torque these two bolts down to 30 foot-pounds. Repeat this process for the other side and the front stabilizer bar bushings will be done. Moving on to the back of the vehicle, again you want to jack up the car from both sides, from the frame and not from the suspension. We're going to start with the bottom nut here. It's 17mm. To take off the top nut, you're going to have to put a wrench here, a 14mm open end wrench. and a 12mm, preferably a ratcheting wrench on the top. Make sure you kind of take note of how these washers and bushings go on, because they're going to go back on the same way with the new one. Here's the new end link. There is a grease fitting here, but it is pre-greased, so you don't have to worry about that. Bottom slides in there, top slides in there. And recall your order of your retainers and bushings. It's going to go retainer, bushing, retainer under there first. And then on the top, you're going to put one more bushing, one more retainer, and then finally the nut on top. On the bottom side, washer, and then finally nut as well. This Moog end link is actually a little bigger than the OEM. You're going to have a 15mm on the bottom and a 13mm on top. Again, a ratcheting wrench will help you a lot here. It's going to take a lot of turns to get this done, so take your time. It's supposed to be torqued down to 11 foot-pounds, but you can't really fit a torque wrench in there, so do your best guess with a box end wrench. Similar to the front end link, you're going to have to hold the inside nut as you tighten the outside nut. You're going to tighten this down to 52 foot-pounds. Repeat this process to the other side, and the end links will be complete on the rear. Finally, we can get to the rear stabilizer bar bushings. Process is almost exactly the same as the front. There's two 12mm bolts to remove. You take those out, remove the existing bushing, slide the new one back onto the bar, and tighten these back down to 22 foot-pounds. I didn't get footage of the removal and replacement of these rear bushings, but if you're able to follow along with the front bushings, you can do the rear ones just the same way. Replace the rear bushings on both sides, and the stabilizer bar will be done in the rear. Now you can put the wheels back on and let the car back down. You're going to want to torque the lug nuts down to 83 foot-pounds. This job only took a couple hours in total. I think it took longer to jack the car up, take the wheels off, take off the splash guard than it did to actually replace the end links and the bushing. I'd say any garage mechanic can take care of this themselves. After driving around a bit on the new components, I've noticed that there's less clunking on stopping and starts. I think it was mostly the sway bar bushings that fixed the issue. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful in replacing some of the components of your sway bar. If you found it extra helpful, you guys can help us out by hitting that like button on the video and subscribing to the channel if you'd like to see similar videos to this. If anything wasn't clear or you have further questions, drop a question down in the comments and we'll get back to you. Thanks again, we'll see you next time.